Hi, I'm Max Loggeman, and today I'm targeting Ohio state legislatures to remove the death penalty. The death penalty has become a hot topic lately across the nation, as states have the choice to use it or not, but the United States is one of 39 countries that still use it. Ohio has struggled with the death penalty financially, as well as obtaining the drugs used in executions. The death penalty should be abolished due to financial issues, struggling to perform the executions, the possibility of wrongful convictions, and it is becoming less and less used throughout the world as well as the United States. And they should replace it with life without parole. Where life without parole, you kind of rot in prison for the rest of your life, and death penalty, you wait like 10, 15 years and are basically put away. Ohio's struggle is they recently had trouble getting necessary drugs used in executions. Pharmaceutical companies have started to refuse to sell these drugs due to they know what they'll be used for and don't want their medications being used to kill people. Ohio has also tried to look overseas to get the drugs, but that is illegal by the federal government. In 2014, they used a new untested cocktail for Dennis McGuire's execution. Took McGuire 15 minutes to die, which is unusually long. Deborah Deno, a lethal injection case expert and professor at Fordham University, said that when done properly, lethal injections take 4 to 5 minutes to kill. Witnesses say that McGuire struggled, gasped loudly, snorted, and choked for nearly 10 minutes. Well, other states had also tried this cocktail and got similar results. And an execution hasn't been done since this incident in Ohio. This execution could be looked at as cruel and unusual punishment. Although these people have committed horrible crimes, it still took 3 times as long to kill them, which is just not normal. Ohio has also struggled financially, as they spend about $16.8 million annually on executions. And Nevada recently proposed a bill to remove the death penalty, citing high costs and little results, as some lawmakers called the death penalty there a colossal waste of money. And here's a graphic I found online, as Ohio spends about $3 million on the death penalty each case, whereas life without parole is about $1 million. And down at the bottom it gives like some ways they could spend that money. Is you could have more police officers, increase in mental health funding, which has recently been cut, more social workers, and as well as more money for services of each family of the victims, for like funerals. Some need counseling, that sort of stuff. And also, just as like Francisco brought up, you could use this money to help with the opioid crisis. Since 1976, 9 men have been exonerated from death row in Ohio, and 156 have been nationally since 1973. A survey done in 2000 by the League of Women Voters of Ohio indicated that 51% of Ohioans feared that an innocent person could be executed in these cases, and Maryland and Illinois at the time had suspended their executions for similar reasons and abolished them in 2013 and 2011 respectively. One of the main arguments for abolishing the death penalty is that it's unconstitutional. The 8th Amendment protects us from cruel and unusual punishment, and people argue that the death penalty falls under this due to cases like McGuire. In 2014, Judge Cormac Carney of the United States District Court for the Central District of California vacated the death sentence of Ernest Dwayne Jones, saying that the state's death penalty procedure is unconstitutional, and Ohio's process is very similar to California's. And Carney said that the long time period between sentencing and executions is one of the reasons. As Jones was convicted in 1995, he had appealed and sat on death row for 8 years before the California Supreme Court affirmed his conviction in 2013, and this case was still going on in 2014. Also, Carney stated that in 2014, 748 inmates were on death row, and 40% had been on there longer than 19 years. And there's a 1.14 execution rate in California, which was 13 to 900 possible executions. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights was formed in 1966 and came into force in 1977 to progressively reduce the number of offenses for which capital punishment is used. At the time, only 12 countries had abolished the death penalty, and at present, 107 have abolished the death penalty, accounting for over half of the 198 independent countries in the world. 100 of them have rejected it completely in all circumstances, an enormous increase from the 12 in 1966. And some countries still use it, but only for things like war crimes. This shows a shift towards abolishing it completely. As you can see here on the graph, the blue does not use it at all. The yellow is, it says, doesn't use it for ordinary crimes, so those are the countries that will still use it in cases of like war crimes and that sort of stuff. And the green is abolitionist in practice, which is just, I think they're just shifting towards removing it completely. And every 5 years, the United Nations Secretary General releases a report on the status of capital punishment. In April 2015, it showed increased progress towards worldwide abolition. The United States is the only nation of the Western democratic world that has not abolished capital punishment. In the U.S., states have the choice of whether or not to abolish the death penalty. Currently, 20 states have abolished capital punishment. According to the Northwestern Journal of Law and Social Policy, there have been about 1,200 executions in the United States since 1976, and demographics can also affect this punishment. There's about 1,000 have occurred in the South and 500 alone in Texas. Connecticut recently stopped executions and replaced capital punishment to life without parole. They repealed it prospectively, which means anyone who had committed a capital crime before then could still be sentenced to death. And I read that states could find it easier to repeal prospectively than complete, and that can be a solution for Ohio. Because Ohio also would not need to change their state constitution if they repealed that penalty. As capital punishment has shown effects on others involved, not only just the criminal being executed, as there have been some prison workers who have suffered from PTSD like flashbacks and other forms of distress involved in executions. As Ron McAndrew, a retired warden at the Florida State Prison, said, "At night I would awaken to visions of executed inmates sitting on the edge of my bed." And Reverend Carol Pickett, a retired chaplain from the Texas Department of Corrections, said that I began to understand why the warden sometimes didn't return to work for several days following an execution. I too was feeling the drain. A couple other things I found was that in 1995, a random survey of police chiefs and county sheriffs by the League of Women Voters of Ohio found that 85% of them felt that politicians only support the death penalty to show that they are tough on crime. And David Boddicker, director of the Ohio Public Defenders, agreed and said many prosecutors and courts are influenced by the PR aspect of the death penalty, as the death penalty receives a lot of press coverage due to the nature of the case and how the results would reflect upon future elections. Since 1976, or 1967, the death penalty has been inflicted only rarely, erratically, and many of the most heinous criminals have escaped execution. As a couple of those criminals include Chardon school shooter T.J. Lane and James Holmes, if you guys remember the movie theater shooting in Colorado in 2012, also escaped the death penalty. There are more cons than pros associated with the capital punishment, and Ohio has struggled with many issues and would be better off abolishing and replacing with life without parole. First site.